Hi everybody, welcome back to another Books and Looks video. If you are new here, hello, I'm Jen, and what I like to do is read books and play with makeup. So I put them together and made a YouTube channel all about books and looks. So I'm going to tell you about a book that I have recently read while I put my makeup on for the day, and I hope you enjoy it. If you are returning to my videos, thank you so much. I appreciate your watching again. And you may notice I did something cool. I found this craft project DIY thing on TikTok and literally a year ago, and I've been wanting to do it, and I finally did it, and I love it. It took me forever, a lot of trial and error to make it work, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool. What do you think? Let me know if you think it looks cool. Yeah, super fun. These are all books I have not read. So they're not like my next TBR or anything like that. They are just books that I own and want to read. So if you know any of these books, if you can even really see them in the video, they look a little blurry, sorry. If you recognize any of these books and you've read them, add to the comments below. Let me know if I should read them, or if you recognize anything, let me know. But without further ado, let me tell you about my latest read. I read Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Sutano. I think that's how you say her last name. I apologize if it is incorrect. This was really cute. This was recommended to me by my mom, and I really enjoyed it. It is very much my wheelhouse. It's a murder mystery, but it's also funny. Had a little bit of romance in it too, so it was really cute. Let me tell you about it. So obviously Vera Wong is our main character. She's the narrator, and she lives a little bit of a sad life. She lives alone above the tea shop that she owns, and she's been there in Chinatown in oh, I forget where, some city. Let's just say New York, because I don't really remember. But she lives upstairs in an apartment above her tea shop that she's had for decades. Her husband died a few years ago, and she's running it by herself. And she has an adult son who does something in IT, and like they don't talk much. And she tries to call him, and he's just like, "Oh, mom, leave me alone. I'm busy," or whatever. So she's kind of lonely. She's kind of sad, but she keeps moving forward with her life. She's a strong, independent woman, whatever. But she is older, as you can tell from the picture. Like, that's Vera. She's got her gray hair and her little old lady glasses. So she's a very cute lady. But she's also very stereotypically Chinese mother. Respect your elders is important, and routine and culture and history and all of that is very important to her, which is part of the reason that she still lives the life she lives. But that's neither here nor there. Well, one day she wakes up and goes downstairs into her tea shop and finds a dead body. Just some random guy who broke into her tea shop and died on the floor of her tea shop. And she doesn't really understand what's going on. She's just like, well, this is interesting. But she's thinking like, oh, exciting. Finally something interesting to do. And so she calls the police. But before the police get there, she finds a flash drive in his hand, and she takes it. We don't really know why she takes it, but she does. And she even narrates, she's like, I don't know what compelled me to take it, but I did. So she takes it. So this whole time, the whole story, this flash drive is there. She like forgets about it. But the police come, and they're like, oh, it was a robbery. He had an allergic reaction. You find out about a third of the way through the book that he died of maybe even halfway through the book, that he died of an allergic reaction. But they still don't know, like, why did he break into her tea shop? We don't know. We don't know who he is or anything. Well, for some reason, she decides, oh, this guy was murdered. I'm sure of it. And so she's going to investigate it, since the police ruled it an accidental death. He broke in maybe to rob her or something and died. But, moving on. So the police decide not to pursue any investigation. So she decides to pursue the investigation herself. She puts an ad in the paper about this man. I don't remember how, but she somehow puts something in the newspaper saying, like, come to my tea shop on this day, blah, 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 for information or to say goodbye, or I'm not exactly sure, but whatever she did, she ended up getting 3 people to show up on the, specified day and time. The first one who shows up claims to be an online journalist who is investigating it for the news or whatever, like an investigative. No, he's just like a news writer. So he's there to investigate it, but in reality, and you as the reader know what the reality is and know that he's lying, and even Vera's like, okay, but she goes with it. So he shows up, and I'm awful with names. If you've seen any of my videos, awful with names. Hold on. And this book is told from the perspective of all the different characters, which is really, really cool. Riki. Riki was the guy who claimed to be a news reporter and was there to report the crime. So, but in reality, Riki knew the dead guy and hated the dead guy, and is actually, Vera decides all these people who showed up are the main suspects, because why would somebody show up unless, like, she read somewhere that murderers tend to return to the scene of the crime, so she's convinced like one of these people is the killer. So Riki shows up and he has something to do with it. We don't find out what his connection to the dead guy is for quite some time, but Vera starts interrogating him and investigating him, but of course offers him tea. Obviously offers him some tea and treats. So next person who shows up is Sana, S-A-N-A, I believe it is. S-A-N-A, Sana. And she also knows the dead guy in her own way and has a motive for killing him, but we don't really find out until later. But again, as the reader, you know that she's keeping a secret and actually does know the dead guy and is involved somehow. But we don't find that out for a while. But Vera, in the beginning, again, she's like, you're my main suspects. So Sana's another suspect. She shows up and says that she is an investigative reporter investigating a rash of break-ins in the area and wants to get some information about it because she's going to do like this big tell-all for this neighborhood and break-ins and stuff, and so she wants information. And Vera's like, okay, I know you're a suspect, but come on in. So Sana and Riki are the ones that have the little budding romance. They meet for the first time here, and in the very beginning, they're both like, oh, she's beautiful, oh, he's handsome, but, they have to keep up appearances because they are, keeping a big secret. So then the dead guy seemingly appears at the door and walks in. Everybody's like, oh, how are you here? You're supposed to be dead. But as it turns out, he has a twin brother, an identical twin brother, obviously. So the twin brother is also a key suspect because he also shows up just like Vera expected the murderer to do, but she never expected to have 3 suspects. So now she has to do some investigation, and she's all excited because she has something interesting to live for now. Well, she slowly investigates, and then she finds out, the brother hadn't spoken to the dead guy. Hold on, let me find the brother's name, because you know me names. I gotta. Maybe he doesn't have. No, I'm pretty sure he has. Oliver? I think his name is Oliver. Yep, Oliver. Oliver's the brother. So Oliver's like, I'm obviously his brother. I haven't spoken to him in years. We were never really close. Even when we were kids, we didn't get along. Our mother died when I was little, and my mother was the only one who ever loved me. Like, he's pretty honest about it all. He's like, I'm his brother. We were never close. My mother died. My father and he were always super close. So once my mother died, like, I just kind of lived on my own, blah, blah, blah. So that's Oliver's story. And he's pretty honest about it. But then Oliver says, well, what about his wife? Does anybody know how his wife is doing? So then we find out that the dead guy has a wife. Her name is Julia. And they have a little girl who's like 2. I don't know her name. But anyway, her daughter. So now they're like, oh my gosh, she has a wife. And so they find out where she lives. Oh, because the brother obviously knows. Now the brother has not met the daughter and hasn't seen his brother or Julia since like the wedding, I think. Excuse me. So he's like, for whatever reason, he's like really, really nervous to go over to Julia's house and check on her. But when they do, you find out that Julia basically tells the police and everybody, oh, my husband just left me like 3 days before he died. He left me. He told me that he finally had his, where's my lid? Crap. There it is. He finally got his big break, and he'll be damned if he shares it with her when she didn't do anything to help him with it. No. You find out through Julia's point of view chapters that the guy who died was a complete and total douchebag. He basically, like, he never hit her, but he belittled her. He was like a narcissist, and he would emotionally abuse her, psychologically abuse her, told her that she was like unattractive and she's lucky that he married her, and she was a bad mother, and their daughter had some like shyness, but as you find out, it's because the dad was such a D-bag. She was always nervous and scared, and it manifested in a lot of different ways, right? Like, she didn't want to be around anybody. She didn't want to leave the house because she was afraid of people because of the dead guy. And so Julia also is in a similar situation. She wasn't allowed to work because he was going to provide for the family, but he didn't because they were always struggling financially and, whatever. So he was a jerk. And Julia, and then you slowly find out that Julia and Oliver have a history. Julia and Oliver used to be best friends back in high school and middle school and high school, but then eventually the brother wooed her and married him, and then Oliver was just like, you really shouldn't be with him. He's really not a great guy, because Oliver grew up with him and was like bullied by him his whole life, and basically was trying to tell his best friend Julia, who P.S. he was in love with, we know, like, don't marry him, he's a jerk, he's gonna treat you terribly. And Julia's just like, no, I love him, he's wonderful, he makes me feel so great, blah blah blah. But then as soon as they get married, everything Oliver said was correct. And all that information slowly comes out because Oliver stopped talking, because like Oliver and Julia stopped talking to one another because her husband, his brother, was just like, Oliver's jealous of me. He's always been jealous of me. He's mad at you because you chose me over him. Like, you don't need a friend like that in your life. Just stop talking to him. So she does, because she's in this, emotionally abusive relationship. So we find all of this stuff out as the story unfolds. But again, we know that 3 days before he died, he came into some big break and left his wife. So she was the main suspect with the police until they determined it was an allergic reaction and like no wasn't murder. So she's off the hook. But Vera realizes that Julia and her daughter are really struggling because she has no money. She doesn't have a job. And so Vera decides, I forget why, she moves in with Julia. She owns a little house and she moves in, I think because she feels guilty, but also because she's like investigating her as one of the suspects. And so, but in the meantime, she goes in and she lives there for a little bit. Like, let me help you out. I'll take care of your daughter while you get, a part-time job and go find some work. So she does. So Julia starts bringing in some income by being a photographer. And Vera, like Unsolicited Advice for Murderers, she gives her all this great advice. Like, what you need to do is just like take any job, no matter what it pays, and then, slowly build your clientele. They'll talk and you'll get more jobs. And of course, Vera is right. Okay. This whole story, by the way, takes place over the span of like 3 months. So she's living there. Julia's starting to make some money as a freelance photographer. Vera's helping her out by like caring for Julia while she's at work. Also just like keeping the house, cooking, all that good stuff. And she's like an amazing cook, of course. Also, Riki and Santa slowly also kind of get folded into the group because they're still investigating this murder. And you slowly come to find out how they're connected to the dead guy. So we know Oliver's his twin brother, and they have always had this terrible backstory. So Oliver has a motive, like he hates his brother, he stole the love of his life, blah, 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 blah. So he has a reason to kill his brother. Julia has a reason to kill her husband. He was about to leave her with nothing. He had a life insurance policy. Or no, he didn't have a... No, he did have a life insurance policy, but there's like issues of figuring out the details of that. But you know he had a life insurance, so she's a suspect. Now remember, this is only in Vera's mind. The police have ruled it an accidental death by allergic reaction, which P.S. I'll tell you what the allergy is later. I don't want to reveal that just yet. So Julia has reason to be a suspect. So then you slowly find out about Riki and Santa. So Riki was he was a coder, like a programmer, and the dead guy, I really need to remember his name. He contacted Riki and said, "Hey man, I need you to create a program for me where I can..." It was really technical. I didn't understand it. And that's kind of the point, because like Vera doesn't understand it either. But he basically asked Riki to make a program that would be able to take physical art, like paintings or whatever, and make digital versions that you can sell online. Not like scan stuff in, but like the physical art is its own entity, but the digital art is its own entity too, even though it's the same art, and like he becomes the owner of it. It has like copyright for it. It's a thing. I don't understand. It's a thing. So Riki, who is working, as I said, as a programmer, and actually I think the story takes place in San Francisco, which makes sense because he's out near like Silicon Valley and stuff doing tech work. But anyway, I digress. So he needs to do work to send money home to his family, because his family back in, I forget where he was from. I don't know, somewhere in the Middle East. I don't remember which country he was from, but he was sending his income and his money back there, partly for his little brother, who is like really intelligent, and they need to pay for him to go to a special school, but they can't afford it. But he gets terribly, terribly bullied in the free school because of how smart he is, and he's small and whatnot. But anyway, so he's trying to make this money to help his family afford to send his brother to a special school. And so he's working his butt off trying to make this happen. And so when the dead guy asks him to do this, and he's like, "I'll give you $15,000 if you create this program for me," he's like, "Okay, fine." So he did that, and he didn't realize that he was going to use it for nefarious purposes, right? So Riki is like really mad. And about halfway through the book, maybe a little more, closer to 3/4, you find out the day that he died, he and Riki met, and Riki basically approached him in a restaurant. He was having lunch with his dad or something, and he approached him in the restaurant and was like, "I can't believe you did this. You lied to me. You asked me to do this. You haven't even paid me yet, and now I find out you used it to like cheat people out of their intellectual property and steal from them." And he punches Oliver in the face. Which, that reminds me, in the very beginning the dead guy in the face. Which reminds me, in the beginning, when they find the dead guy, he has a black eye, a fresh black eye, and a scratch on his cheek. So they think, Vera's like, that's evidence that he was murdered. Like, he was in a fight, the glass was broken on her door, and the police are just like, he must have like, since he died, now that we know he died of an allergic reaction, he was probably like choking and he fell and he hit his face, and that's what happened, But in reality, we find out that Riki punched him because of this situation, right? Like, you stole from me, you cheated me, you lied to me, blah, blah, blah. And punches him in the face. And that's where the black eye came from. And then you find out Santa's connection to the dead guy. She also spoke to the dead guy the day he died, because she had her artwork stolen. And the dead guy stole her artwork and was selling it online and making his own profit, right? So she met with him. For a while, she was like really depressed and sad because she was a college student, and she was an art major trying to be a professional artist. But she had all these pieces of art that he stole from her, and now he was selling and making money on, but she couldn't because she no longer had intellectual ownership of it. So she was really mad at him, which is why she finally found the courage to meet with him and say, like, how could you do this to me? And he basically laughed in her face and was like, if you're that stupid to sign off on this paperwork without reading it and understanding what you were doing, that's your fault. Your stuff is my stuff now, and I'm selling it, and it's not my problem. So she ended up scratching him somehow. I don't like the other guy, he punched him, and she scratched him. So that's where the scratch came from, right? So now we know that both Riki and Santa saw him the day that he died, at least earlier in the day. And so they're prime suspects. They know they were, Vera knows they were together the day he died, knows that they had reason to kill him. And same with Julia. He was about to leave her. And so she's just like, oh my gosh. But Vera's adorable, okay? She's like really bossy, like this older woman who culturally is like, I'm in charge, and whatever I say you need to do because you respect your elders, and I'm wiser than you and know better than you, so you should just do what I tell you. So she's like that with everybody. And all of them, Oliver, Julia, Riki, and Santa, all just do whatever she says because they're a little bit afraid of her, but also they love her and respect her. So it was this really cute dynamic where she would constantly tell them what to do and they would just do it. But then afterwards they would be like, I can't believe we listened to her. Like, I didn't want to do that, but I couldn't resist doing as she, like everything from, okay, I need you guys to go take the trash out, or I need you guys to come in here and help me cook dinner, or it's time to eat now, come in here and eat, or what you need to, like with Julia, you need to get yourself out there and start taking photographs again to make some money. So just like do it. So even though she was terrified and didn't think she was good enough, she did because Vera told her to. Unsolicited advice, right? So it was actually kind of cute. They really all developed this really strong, tight friendship, family-like situation. But at the same time, Vera is technically interrogating them because she thinks they murdered the guy who she found in her tea shop. So, but she's even says to them, like, you're my primary suspect. She has a notebook and like right in front of them, she'll be taking notes about things that they said and like writing down reasons pro, con, that they're the murderer. And she'll even say to them, like, I really hope you're not the murderer because I really like you. It's really funny. But also, as like this older Asian mom, she keeps trying to get Riki and Santa together. She's like plotting and cloying, I don't know what the right word is. She's plotting and toying with them to try to get them to fall in love because she sees the spark from the get-go. And of course it works because by the end of the story, they are a couple. Spoiler alert. But anyway, so yeah, they're doing this and slowly doing whatever they're doing whatever she says, and they're slowly becoming super close and super friends and like almost like family because as you find out, like Oliver's estranged from his whole family because his mom died and now his brother's dead and he doesn't really get along with his dad. And then Santa or Riki doesn't have anybody. I forget. Oh, because his whole family's back home in his home country, so he doesn't really have anybody either. And Riki's estranged from her mother because her mother is an artist, and she has been avoiding her because she feels bad about how she lost everything. So she hasn't spoken to her mother for months, and whatnot. Yeah. So like they kind of build this nice bond. And then of course Julia has lost her husband and is starting to come to terms with the fact that she was in this relationship that was abusive and controlling. And in the meantime, Oliver has been in love with Julia this whole time. And basically, like, they're starting to rekindle, and slowly throughout the story, they start to express, like, oh, I've missed you. You were the best friend I ever had. And, my husband said this about you, and Oliver would be like, oh, well, my brother told me this about you. So he was basically lying to both of them to keep them apart the whole time. And he, like, loves the little girl, and, like, the dead guy, the father, never wanted to have anything to do with the little girl. He was like, she's annoying, she cries too much, you coddle her, she's never going to amount to anything. Just an awful, awful guy. But Oliver's just like, oh my gosh, she's beautiful. She looks just like you. You must be so proud. She's such a smart little girl and all this awesome stuff. Technically is her uncle, but still very father-like to her, and starts, connecting with her and building a relationship. And it's lovely and it's beautiful. So we have these two romances budding, Oliver and Julia, as well as Riki and Santa. Now, as the story comes to a head, I forgot to put powder on. It's okay. As the story comes to a head, you find out what the allergic reaction is, right? So what in the world was he allergic to? And the brother, Oliver, was just like, oh, well, he was allergic to a few things, but one thing that he was really allergic to was bird dander. So they're like, bird dander? Oh, and I forgot about the halfway point of the story, like 2 weeks after they found the dead guy, Vera's tea shop was broken into again, and there was very little evidence because like the door was already wonky, but she knows her store so well, like every little detail, nook and cranny, that one morning she comes out and she's like, there's a couple of things that are not how I left them. And so she knows that somebody broke in, and like some of her teas are missing and moved, and little things are rearranged, like this was supposed to be here but now it's here, and so she, like little things like that. So she knows somebody broke in, and that ends up being important. She doesn't really think anything of it. She doesn't even call the police because she's like, what's the point? Well, okay, so fast forward back to closer to the end of the story. So now Vera's like, okay, we know he died of bird dander. We know a little bit about this stuff. We know he was a jerk and nobody liked him, and he did all these crimes. Oh, the reason they found out about the crimes, okay? Remember the flash drive? So Vera finally, because she's like an older lady, she doesn't know how to do the flash drive, but it takes her like a month to figure out how to get the flash drive. So when she opens the flash drive, it is full of digital art from, tons of different artists that he has scammed into giving him the rights to sell it. And so she also recognizes that a couple of the pieces is art that Santa has created. So she starts to put stuff together that, Riki is a tech guy and Santa's an artist, and now we have this art that has been technified. And so she starts to kind of think like, oh, he's doing something with the art and the tech, and that's how he's making money. And she confronts everybody, and then slowly everything comes out, and they figure out how they're all connected. But still, they're all suspects. Like, even when all the truth comes out, they're still all suspects, but Vera has slowly X'd them. Like, it couldn't have been this person because, for whatever reason. So she determines that, it wasn't, I think she first figured out that it couldn't be Santa because for whatever reason she wasn't nearby, and then it wasn't Riki because there was witnesses from when he punched him, and then he stalked off and was never seen again, and they knew it wasn't Julia because Julia has a daughter and couldn't have done it because she would have been home with her daughter, and then they realized it wasn't Oliver. Like they all ended up figuring out that they didn't do it. So like, who did it? Now, there was a little tidbit at the very beginning that I left out and I probably should have mentioned, but Vera basically only had one regular customer, this little old man who didn't live very far away, and his wife was sick, so he would always say like, oh, well, she's having a good moment. He would come down, let me back up. He would come and see her at the tea shop every morning for like an hour, and he would have a cup of tea, and then she would put together a little bag of items to take back to his wife, like soup or specialty tea, depending on if he said she was in a lot of pain that day. I think she was dying of cancer or was having trouble eating. She would make a specialty tea to take back to his wife as like because this was like his 1 hour away of reprieve from taking care of her being very ill. I forget his name. Either way, we'll just call him the neighbor. He lived a couple blocks away, but we'll just call him the neighbor. So the neighbor would come in every morning. It was like basically the only regular customer that she could rely on. The business was failing, but she was unwilling to part with it because it was all she had ever known, etc. But she has since basically closed her tea shop because now she's living with Julia and her daughter and spending all her time with this group of people. So anyway, now we are at the end of the story, and we're starting to piece it all together because nice. Oliver, the brother, starts talking about how his father always favored his brother, the one who died, and it was frustrating to Oliver because he knew his brother was a scheming liar, and even his dad fell for it. And that he would always bring groceries to his dad, like after his mom died when they were young. He was alone, so he would bring him groceries and whatnot. And even though his dad never wanted to have anything to do with him, he still did this. Like every other week or something, he would just drop it off at his door and like nothing, wouldn't even knock or anything, just leave it there. And his dad knew it was there because it was done regularly. Well, you come to find out, and here's the big twist at the end. At the end, you find out that the Oliver and the dead guy's dad is the same man who was visiting Vera's shop every day, allegedly taking care of his sick wife. He didn't have a sick wife. His wife died years and years ago, and he has never like gotten over it. And he didn't know, like he felt weird. So he just said like, oh, my wife is dying, and I'm just coming down here to get away for a little while. And for what, I don't know why. He had like a reason for making this up and using it as an excuse to go to Vera's. But so the whole time, the father, who doesn't talk to Oliver anymore because the brother convinced him that Oliver was an awful person, this whole time he thought the dead brother had been bringing him groceries, and the dead brother was the one who was doing all of these nice things for him, when in reality the dead brother was a jerk the whole time and pulled the wool over his eyes. But then the father eventually, actually when the father was having lunch with the dead brother and Ricky came in and punched him and was like, I can't believe you did that to me. Like, you lied to me. You're using my stuff to steal. You're a criminal. That was when the father was like, wait, what? And I guess Oliver left a message. So like that was like a couple months ago, right? When Ricky punched him. So since then he's been like, I don't know, like this is, what do I do? It was like, weeks ago. So from the time that Ricky punched him until he died was only like a day. And in that day, he figured out a lot of things. And here's the big twist. The father killed his son. Which, I mean, like, it blew my mind. Seriously. So, because he realized that his son had been lying to him and manipulating him his whole life. He also finally, like, the wool was pulled off of his eyes, and he recognized that his son had been he had never met his granddaughter. And he realized, like, he had all these excuses, but the father finally realized, oh, it's because he's just a douche and for whatever reason wouldn't let. And then he also somehow figured out that the brother, Oliver, had been giving him the groceries the whole time. Oh, he actually said something to the dead son before he was dead about thanks for the groceries, and he was like, what groceries? What are you talking about? And then and that also clicked, like, oh my gosh, it's been Oliver this whole time has been the one bringing me groceries, not him. I've been giving him the credit all this time. So like all these little things click together, and he realized that his son is a criminal and a liar and a manipulator. And he also knows that he's allergic to bird dander, and that there was also a tea in Vera's tea shop that has bird something in it. Bird nests, maybe, like pieces. I don't know. It sounded gross, but apparently it's like this specialty tea. And Vera saved it for special occasions and had mentioned it to him at some point. And so he broke in and... Okay, but not the break-in that I mentioned earlier. I'll explain that break-in. But... No. What it was is Vera gave him that specialty bird tea at one point. And so the father was like, oh, here, I got this specialty tea at this tea shop down the road. You should drink it. It's like some of the best teas I've ever tasted. But it was actually like bird tea. So when he drank it, he went into anaphylactic shock and died. And then they assume that the reason he broke into the tea shop is because he knows that's the tea shop where it came from, and that was like his last clue as to who killed me and why I died and all that stuff. So he went back to the tea shop specifically. I feel like, yeah, it's fine. Specifically as a clue to show, like, tell everybody who would listen, I died because of the bird tea from this place, right? That was his big clue. But nobody figured it out. Well, they did eventually figure it out. But by then, they were like, well, we don't want you to get in trouble. Like, you're such a nice guy, and nobody liked him anyway. But he, being an honorable person and also being distraught with guilt and whatnot, he ended up turning himself into the police at the end of the book and went to jail. But everybody still visits him. Oliver, Vera, Julia, and his granddaughter, everybody still visits him in jail. Like, that's the little epilogue. Like, they're all still friends. Riki and Santa ended up starting to date, becoming a couple. Oliver and Julia reconciled. I don't remember if they ended up a couple or if they just are like best friends again, and like now Oliver is in the life of his, you know, sister-in-law and his niece. But it ended on a very happy note because they all kind of found themselves a family and friends, and the murderer went to jail. He confessed, and, you know, that solution all came together. And Vera, who started out the story lonely, sad, stuck in her ways, just like waiting for her days to be over because her husband died and her son doesn't talk to her anymore. Now she has this group of people who also in the meantime, they came while she was living in Julia's house. They came occasionally over the span of a couple of weeks and fixed up her tea shop. They like cleaned it up, painted it, did repairs, things of that nature. And so her tea shop is up and running again and popular and successful again. So like it ends well. And even her son was like, wow, Mom, I had no idea you had it in you. I can't believe this all came to be. Like, I'm sorry I haven't been there for you. And like he comes back into the fold and it's lovely. It has a very lovely happy ending and I loved it. It was great. I don't think I have any comments as to like, oh, I wish this was done differently or I wish this part was changed. I literally loved everything. I loved the multiple points of view where you learn about Riki's past and Santa's past from his and her chapters. It slowly unfolded. Great pacing for how it slowly unfolded. There were some exciting parts and like nail-biting parts of like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? There was a little bit of a romance undertone between some couples. Vera Wong was very funny in, you know, the way that she spoke and treated people, but just her character was, what's the word I'm looking for? Her character was endearing. That's the word. She was endearing, bossy, and just hilarious. I loved it. Very, very highly recommend. If you like funny stories, if you like murder mysteries, a little bit of romance, all wrapped up. It's a little bit of suspense. Very, very interesting connections between all the characters that slowly unfold. Multiple perspective narration. Great. I love it. Highly recommend. I hope you give it a try because it was fun. You should definitely, give it a try. So that's the end of my video. I feel like I did not do this book justice, but hopefully you get the main gist of the story. I hope the spoiler doesn't ruin reading it for you. It might be interesting because now that you know how it is, you'll know. But anyway, it was cool. And this is my look today. I kind of like it. I did black and pink, and then just pink lips. I like it. I think it's a pretty standard look for me. I do it a lot. Usually not pink though. So that was a nice, interesting little touch. And I like this lip color a lot. Oh no. Crisis averted. Yeah, so that's the end. Sorry, I had a little brain fart. So yeah, that's the end of my video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are interested in this look and you might want to try it sometime. And I definitely hope you want to read this book because it was really good and I really think you'll enjoy it. Give it a try. Add some comments below if you know this book, if you've read this book, if you enjoyed my makeup today, if you have any recommendations for me. I got these guys too, so I don't know if any of those, let me know. If I should read one, if I should raise it up on my TBR list. So, yes, thank you. And yeah, I guess that's the end. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful everything. And as always, stay beautiful inside and out. Mwah. Bye.